Hello and welcome to Gaze at the National Parks, the podcast. I'm Dusty.
And I'm Mike, and welcome to our Season 3 Summit. In this episode, we're talking all about history.
If you're joining us for the first time, Summit episodes are how we cap off each season at Gaze at the National Parks. It's sort of like high school yearbook superlative version of our show, except unlike high school superlatives, there's no Mutt and Jeff category. Okay, what?
Yeah.
Mutt and Jeff.
That's like the best friends. That's like, I think that's like an old-timey way to say best friends.
Girl, I have never seen this category at a high school superlative level.
Well, it was at mine. Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
No,
I forget who
nobody
it was.
like voted like the bestest of friends.
Oh, that was like a thing.
No.
That was a thing at like
No.
It was like
Okay,
who
but-
basically hung out all the
that
time.
begs
Like
the question.
you were like inseparable people.
What were the categories for you?
What were my categories?
Yeah. In high school.
The category is, it was like best dressed, best hair, nicest smile, like friendliest, most artistic, most sporty. I don't remember. I can go get my yearbook. It's here.
Oh, woof.
Yeah.
Okay. Not that mine were
Let's
much
take
better.
a look at some acne to people.
Not that mine were much better.
Right.
But I think they were like friendliest,
Mhm.
funniest,
Mhm.
most likely
Also
to
meant
succeed. Most likely to succeed. Most talented.
Oh, that was definitely one. Most school spirit.
Oh yeah, most spirited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess that was that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are more that we're just not thinking about because, you know, we went to high school back in like 1682. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. When high school was just being invented.
Right, exactly.
The first time.
One room schoolhouse.
Were you voted any of those superlatives?
I was most creative.
Oh, look
or
at
most
you.
artistic. And I know that you were the witchiest.
Right. Precisely.
You, I believe, were most school spirited and I believe also best dancer.
Yes. And funniest.
Gay.
Right. Yeah, I was voted most spirited because one of my best friends at the time, Stephanie, and I would dress like the Spartan cheerleaders from Saturday Night Live. And then the cheerleaders on Friday during pep rallies would they just gave us time.
Yeah.
We were like, hey, we want to put a routine together like the Spartan cheerleaders. Could we have some time? And they were like, yeah. And they did. We did it in front of everybody.
So I believe that all of those categories were voted on in one lump from
Yes.
that routine. It was like, oh, let's check these boxes. He's funny. Gay. He can dance. Gay. And he's got a lot of spirit.
Yeah, sure. There you go. All three.
Getting back to our actual episode, each of the Summit episodes examines the parks in the season through its own particular lens.
Let's take a moment to remember which parks we visited this season. Mesa Verde in Colorado, Great Sand Dunes, also in Colorado, Joshua Tree in California, Petrified Forest in Arizona, Grand Canyon in Arizona, Acadia in Maine, Catoctin Mountain in Maryland, and Gettysburg National Military Park in Pennsylvania.
Each of the Summit episodes on these parks examines the parks of the past season through its own particular lens. Our Summit on Visitorship examined crowdedness, accessibility, location to civilization, and a whole manner of things you might be curious about when you are visiting one of these parks.
Our Summit on Wildlife explores the delicate ecosystems of these parks and the lands that surround them through the lens of their flora and fauna. And our Hiking Trail Summit pits trail against trail in a battle royale for ultimate MPS hiking trail. Sort of, not really, but you get the idea.
That's right. If you've listened to our other summits this season, you sort of know the ropes and are prepared for what's in store. Or are you? In order to shake things up a little bit and make the history of these parks a little spicier, I've devised 3 rounds of trivia.
Trivia.
Actrivia.
Oh my God, welcome to the stage, Actrivia Yogurt.
Add her to the list.
She's, she is also a questions queen.
Questions queen. Anyway, I've devised 3 rounds of trivia just for you. Each category relates to the history of the parks we visited this season in some way, whether it be some current news, history of the park, or in some way relate to the indigenous people who originally called these lands their home. With each correct answer, we'll dive a little deeper into that story so you can learn a little bit more about the park. Are you ready?
Yes.
Here are our categories. The first is Newsflash. Newsflash is all about the current events within the parks, but also those whose impact goes just beyond a fleeting moment. These events have happened sometime over the last 12 months. For those of you listening to this episode in the future, that's from May 2020 to May 2021. The second category is Blast from the Past. Blast from the Past deals with direct history of the parks and relates to important events, people, or places and their impact on one of the parks from this season. And finally, Perspectives, which explores the indigenous cultures of the land that the parks now occupy, land that was stolen from these indigenous people. Which category would you like to start with?
Let's start with Blast from the Past.
Great. Blast from the Past for 100. Along with taking some of the early photos of what would inspire the creation of Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park, William Henry Jackson was one of the first people to photograph this Mesa Verde ruin, as he was the official photographer for the USGS.
What is Cliff Palace?
That's correct. So interestingly enough, he was one of the early photographers of the national parks. He was the photographer for the USGS, so he was kind of sent out and was cataloging all of these different parks prior to the fact that they had become parks, which was really, really cool. He is actually related to the artist who created Uncle Sam.
Oh,
which is like a little bit of tidbit of history, which is fascinating there.
All right.
He's like the great-great-grandson, I believe.
Ah, okay.
So a little bit of history there. Blast from the Past for 200. The name Marjorie Stoneman Douglas probably comes to mind when you think of the conservation effort of Everglades National Park. But this Western National Park near Palm Springs and its desert fauna and flora owe their founding to another passionate conservator, Minerva Hoyt. Name the park.
What is Joshua Tree
That's
National Park?
correct. Absolutely correct. Minerva Hoyt was instrumental in pushing for the conservation of desert lands. Joshua Tree was one of those parks that she had really had a passion for. She also had influence over the initial creation, or at least putting it on the radar, for Death Valley. So she was one of those people that was really passionate about that and really pushed for that.
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas is also the namesake for the high school in Parkland,
Yes,
Florida.
It is. For 300, the land of this park, which was once a part of York County, had residents that decided they would like to separate into their own county, naming it Adams after the president of the time. This was, of course, about 63 years prior to the event, which would eventually lead to its demarcation as part of the NPS. Name the park.
Oh, Acadia.
Incorrect. What is Gettysburg? I gave you that hint with the 63 years, because 1863 and President Adams being president around. I know your blind spot. U.S. history.
Yeah.
Or presidential history.
Still my blind spot.
Not U.S. history, because you know your U.S. history pretty well. Yeah, so Gettysburg was actually a part of this one county, and these residents were like, nah, we want to get out of here. And so they created their own county, which became Adams. A little bit of history there for you. There was also fascinating history about interaction between the indigenous folks of the area and the first settlers, which is worth reading into. Something that I didn't have enough time to delve into right now. But if you're interested, please go ahead and do that research. As we always say, it's great to do your own research too and find out some info about the stuff that we're talking about as well. For 400, this park site had foundations in the iron, sawmill, and whiskey still industries before the CCC and WPA made waves on the site.
What is Catoctin Mountain?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, Catoctin Mountain had a lot of industry that went through it, and there were a lot of resources that came from it, including resources in the long distant past, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And finally, for 500, while efforts had been made in the late 1890s to create a new national park in this space, this park was first a national monument in 1906, the same year that Mesa Verde became a national park. And even though the, quote, kingmaker of the NPS, John Muir, had explored this park in the early 1900s, it wouldn't receive official park status until the 1960s, despite the historic route that passed near and through it.
What is Grand Canyon?
Incorrect.
Oh, what is Petrified Forest?
That's correct. Historic Route 66 was the route that kind of passes through and near it.
Right.
There's also a lot of very interesting history to the Painted Desert Inn, which is right there in Painted Desert National Monument, which those sites are basically essentially managed together because they hug one another. This is also a great site that you could definitely see basically everything in a day, and definitely worth doing.
Yes. Most definitely.
What category would you like to go to next?
We've got to
Blast from the Past and Perspectives.
Let's go to Perspectives.
And I'm sorry, we have Newsflash and Perspectives.
Let's go to Perspectives.
Great. Perspectives. For 100, these subterranean structures found at Mesa Verde, as well as a variety of other sites which were believed to have been developed from earlier pit houses, are often cited as places for ceremonial, political, community, or familial meetings.
What are kivas?
That's correct. A kiva. We talk all about the kind of structure and history of Mesa Verde and the architecture there in our third episode on Mesa Verde, which is all about our tour of Cliff Palace. Our park guide, when we were reviewing Cliff Palace, talked a lot about the multiple uses of kivas and that they really did go beyond just ceremonial purposes, which oftentimes they're painted as just a ceremonial space. For 200, although many people do not realize it, Native Americans fought in the Civil War just as they had in previous American conflicts prior to this. While they believed that they would receive better treatment and maintain control of their land if they enlisted, this was often not the case, especially since the Civil War led into the Indian Wars, which further abused and killed the indigenous people of the land. While there are no monuments to Native Americans or their contributions to the Civil War, the closest recognition comes with the depiction of this often associated but not necessarily correct Native American item on the monument to the 42nd New York at Gettysburg National Military Park.
My guess is something involving feathers.
No.
Okay.
It's what is a teepee?
I see.
So, unfortunately, that's what often becomes a commonplace thought or symbol when one thinks of Native American housing,
well,
but is not
that has become
very, right.
It has become
right.
that,
not
even though
very
it is,
correct.
No.
Yes, some.
Oh, sure,
yes,
some, but
not all.
The various indigenous tribes of this land we also call America didn't necessarily use teepees.
No, not at all. Lots of different styles.
Lots of different styles of homes.
Exactly.
Just like there have always been lots of different styles of homes.
Exactly. For 300, the Navajo people, or Diné, revere Blanca Peak, or Mount Blanca, which is just north of this granular national park, as one of their 4 sacred mountains, knowing it as White Shell Mountain, or Sina Diné.
What is Great Sand Dunes National Park?
That's absolutely correct. So this was really fascinating information. The Diné people believe that there were 4 sacred stones that were used to create the mountains in the north, south, east, and west. This is like creation myth story, and it's really fascinating to look into. Essentially, at the very bare bones of the story, the gods of this plane, which is the shimmering realm, created 4 sacred mountains in the north, south, east, and west using different material. And white shell was used to create Mount Blanca, which is right near Great Sand Dunes. It's a great history to look into, and it's an interesting story that I suggest that you do a little bit more of your own research on. Great. For 400, this park site was one that was used to mine for rhyolite, which was a valued material for making tools in the Archaic period. No permanent year-round residences of indigenous people were believed to have been within the boundaries of this park site, but rather temporary base camps. Rhyolite was important in trade and a valued material. Traces of these tools have been found as far as New York and coastal Virginia. Can you name the park site?
What is Catoctin Mountain?
That's correct. I sort of hinted at this in our last clue. So this is interesting, again, history of how the land of Catoctin Mountain was used for so many different things from the time of indigenous people using that space, not as necessarily a land which was permanently occupied, but one that was kind of had temporary residences that people would use to kind of mine for this stone. And then eventually, obviously, as settlers came, it was used for all of those other industries as well. Our last question here for 500. While the Anasazi are some of the first recognized indigenous people to occupy this land, it is the Havalupai and the Havasupai who occupied the land when the white settlers arrived. Between combat with and relocation by the U.S. government, both of these tribes ended up near this parkland they originally occupied.
What is Grand Canyon?
That's absolutely correct. That's correct. So yes, and those names, Havalupai and Havasupai, are still used within the canyon for trails and other things as well. So that leaves us with one final category, and that's Newsflash. So this is
Great,
current events that have happened around the national parks within the last year. All right, for those of you listening, this is 2020, May of 2020 to May of 2021. Okay, for 100. This national park, established in 1906, was done so to help preserve the human structures within the park, including Spruce Tree House. Recently, it was honored with this distinction, the 100th park site to attain this, which recognizes the exceptional quality of the park's night sky. Please name the park and the distinction.
What is Mesa Verde?
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of the Dark Sky Society.
That's correct. It's part of the International Dark Sky Park Society. So that recently happened. I believe it was April of this year. So that's a great distinction. We've been to a bunch of dark sky parks, haven't had the best of luck. But maybe on our trip this summer, we will have some really good luck in a dark sky park. Yeah. I'm thinking probably Glacier is going to be.
Or Badlands.
Or Badlands. Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, for 200. This park, known for its specific and to some people holy flora, is also a mecca for climbing and bouldering. However, the 1995 General Management Plan and the 2000 Backcountry and Wilderness Management Plan are in no way sufficient to meet the current needs of the park goers, and more importantly, not in the best interests of preservation of the park and its fragile ecosystem, which has already seen a great deal of damage with past government shutdowns. A new plan is currently being worked on. Name the park.
What is Acadia?
Incorrect.
No. What is that? Joshua Tree.
That's correct.
That's it.
Yeah. Joshua Tree has really endured a great amount of abuse of the land in so many ways in the last several years. And this doesn't even include government shutdown time. We have a friend that lives basically right on the edge of the park. He has recently told us of just some things that he's come across that are like Joshua trees that are graffitied on and stones that are or rocks that are graffitied on. And it's a real problem.
Very sad.
Especially because this park is such a mecca for so many people to visit that live in that Southern California region. It's incredibly sad. And so hopefully this management plan is going to help work to stem some of these issues and solve some of these problems. For 300, bingo, bango, this national park, which truly seems like a blast from the past, had a discovery of 2 new fossils in late 2020, which added to the rich tapestry of its land before time qualities. Name the park.
What is Petrified Forest?
That's absolutely correct. So 2 new fossils which have been discovered in Petrified Forest National Park. Obviously, there's been a lot of discovery there in the past, but this adds to that rich history within the park already. For 400, this national park, which sees its fair share of visitors, has already piloted a program for reservation for 2 of its most popular locations within the park in the fall of 2020. One a beach, whose surface is different from the rest of the rocky shoreline, and the other a mountain summit road, whose name is also that of a car or the nickname of a very expensive healthcare plan. This reservation plan looks like it's here to stay. Name the park and the 2 locations within it that require permits.
Okay, so what is Acadia?
That's correct.
And we're talking about Catoctin Mountain.
That's correct.
And also, I don't know right now.
Different from the rocky shoreline. It's Sand Beach.
Oh, Sand Beach.
Sandy. Yes. So also, if you're traveling and you're headed to parks, Acadia is not the only park that has started to institute reservation systems for very popular sites. We are headed to Glacier this summer. We had to reserve tickets to going to the Sun Road.
Well, when you're hearing this, we will have already been to Glacier.
That's right. We'll be there and back.
There and done.
So it's a hobbit's tale. But anyway, take a look and see anytime you're going to a park if reservations are required, especially if you're headed there in a very busy time of year. You really may need to look in advance. We had to get our tickets for going to the Sun Road about a month out, right? It was about a month out. We were able to reserve.
2 months out.
Oh, it was 60 days. So be aware of that because those tickets can go quickly. The nice thing about going to the Sun Road is they have some walk-ups that you can do day of. But that's also, a potential crapshoot. So, yeah. And our final question of Newsflash. During the summer of 2020, I wrote 202. During the summer of 2020, when many monuments were called into question, vandalized, or taken down, a monument in this park site appeared to be yet another. However, what had in fact occurred was the application of a biological cleaning solution which reacted when wetted from a passing rainstorm. Name the park. Bonus points if you can name the monument.
Okay, what is Gettysburg?
That is correct.
And is it the Robert E. Lee statue?
It's not. It's the Arkansas Memorial.
Okay.
And apparently what had happened is, so this is a biological agent that is used pretty widely within park sites where there are sculptures or statuary or monuments to clean off lichen or mold or anything like that. And basically it was sprayed. They realized that it reacted well with rain, so that the park staff, all they needed to do was spray it, let a rainstorm pass if they knew one was coming, and that would kind of do the rest of the work for them. So it would kind of hasten their job. And I guess people had walked by the monument previously to the rainstorm, then walked by again, and it looked like it had been damaged, but it was just the chemical reacting and doing its job.
Oh.
So people thought
Fascinating.
because it was a monument to a southern state that there was some...
It was being
vandalized.
Mm-hmm. Look at that.
Look at that. And that's our histories episode. But we're not done. We got to talk about our drag queen for this episode.
Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Paige Count.
Paige Count.
Paige Count felt like a very appropriate queen for this
Count.
episode. Mm-hmm.
I think she's a vampire.
Oh, Paige Count.
Yeah,
Count
she's
Paige.
the Count. I think she's a vampire.
She's a vampire queen.
She's a
vampira.
Vampire.
So does she have a very Elvira sort of vibe going on?
No. I think she's you wouldn't know she was the vampire.
Okay.
Maybe she's like Gaga in Horror Story, and she doesn't bite, she cuts.
Oh.
She's got that fingernail.
As long as Matthew Balmer is there, let's go. Okay, so she's the Countess, Paige Countess.
Paige Countess. I mean, could also be her name.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
That's fair, especially since vampires live a very long time. She feels even more appropriate now because she's a history queen.
Yes, exactly.
She's seen it all.
She's seen everything.
She has seen it all.
I do imagine... I think her fashion is very much like the music video of Total Eclipse of the Heart. Very big, flowy, white, gigantic hair, wind, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I do appreciate that.
And I think she does 80s music.
Oh, well, that was her favorite decade that she lived through.
I think she lip syncs It Must Have Been Love.
Oh, that's
I'm thinking It Must Have Been Love, but it's over now.
Mm-hmm.
It's her
ballad for all time.
Maybe it's an act she does when she's claiming a vampire victim.
Okay. So is that part of the stage show?
Yeah.
But people don't realize what's happening. They're like, oh, what a great act that was. But she's actually turning people.
Oh, she's just, I think, turning the one person on stage with her.
Right. That's what I'm saying. She's turning that person, but no one in the audience knows what's going on.
Right. Maybe it's do you want to come up here and be a part of my act? But really that person's a plant.
Oh, okay.
And so by the end of it,
they've
turned into a vampire.
There was consent.
There was,
That's important.
Of course. And so that person turns into a vampire. And so it's oh, she just pulled somebody out of the audience and turned them into a vampire.
Oh, I see. Look at that.
That's my thought.
Oh, I like that. Total Eclipse of the Heart. So does she have Halloween merchandise? Because I feel like she could capitalize on that. Or she's just not into Halloween.
I don't think so.
No.
I think she's got, maybe she has a lipstick line, a very red lipstick.
Very red lipstick. That's what it's called.
Very red lipstick.
VRL.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Page Count.
This has been the Season 3 Summit by Gaze at the National Parks, the podcast, and we're here to remind you to hike early and hike often, and that adventure is always out there.
Gaze at the National Parks was created and hosted by us,
Dustin Ballard
and Michael Ryan.
To see images from this episode, follow our Instagram at Gaze at the National Parks. To contact us, email us at gazeatthenationalparks@gmail.com. And to find out more about the parks visited on this show, visit our website, gazeatthenationalparks.com. That's Gaze, G-A-Z-E.
All original artwork featured on Instagram and on our website is by me, Michael Ryan.
All original music was written by Dave Seaman and performed by Dave Seaman, Mariella Klinger, and Sean Sklios. Our music producer is Skyler Fortgang. This episode was edited by me, Dustin Ballard.
We would also like to acknowledge that while recording this episode that we are on the traditional and stolen lands of the Lenape people, also known as Ocean County, New Jersey.